This TSN 1040 podcast is powered by Metro Ford. It's hard to beat a Metro Ford deal. In Fort Coquitlam and online at metromotors.com.
We are an all-sports radio station, and even though we're talking a bit about baseball, we will at least make sure that you know what the quote-unquote local NFL team is doing. As here in the TSN 1040 studios, we do fly the 12. I guess they gave it to us at some point. Okay, we got a lot to get to when it comes to baseball right now. We have a packed show for you. Last week, we experimented with a whole bunch of different things, and I think some of the stuff stuck. Matt Sakaris was kind enough to anoint us as, doing things and going in the right direction. So to him and to everybody else that was kind enough to send in your tweets, texts, emails, thank you for that, and you will enjoy this show. Lou Filippo will join us just seconds from now. KP Wees decided to make a cameo, which is always a good thing. Corey Basso, a huge fan when he saw KP walking through the doors. It was kind of like the glass breaking, like Stone Cold back in the days. Anyways, we don't have it queued up, so don't worry about it. We mentioned right off the hop that Rob Manfred came into Toronto and absolutely, I don't want to say aired out the Blue Jays, but it felt like it. Just because you would never imagine that an acting Major League Baseball commissioner, the commish, would all of a sudden take a strip off of an organization. Now, this went up the totem pole. It was more meant for Rogers than anybody else. I can't imagine that they're on John Gibbons or on Mark Shapiro, who's been at the helm for a couple of years and done a lot of things right as far as getting the baseball operations go. But it is Rogers Center, formerly known as Skydome, that took this one on the chin. Now, to take you back to the early 90s, if you remember, Skydome came out and it was a state-of-the-art stadium. You couldn't do better than Skydome, a retractable roof that moved in a couple of different pieces. It opened in just a couple of minutes, and life was good. And then no sooner did you blink your eye than all of a sudden down the road in Baltimore, Maryland, they opened up Camden Yards, and everybody said, oh, wait a minute, what's this? A retrofit stadium for about $37,000 that looks and feels like old-time baseball. And within 5 to 10 years, Skydome, now known as Rogers Center, was completely outdated. Kind of like watching a baseball game in the middle of a mall. So I'm going to go to KBW in a second, but Lou Filippo, welcome to Vancouver Canadians Game Day. You are a former Torontonian.
Yes.
You've seen Exhibition Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen Skydome, now, of course, known as Rogers Center. Was Rob Manfred right? Not right in doing it, but right in what he assessed to be the problems with Rogers Center.
Okay, well, the points he brought up were quite valid, but that's a result of the age of the stadium. I mean, the stadium is now 27 years old. And since then, you look at what they've done with stadiums. I mean, Camden Yards, perfect example. I mean, unbelievable environment. They've gone retro with stadiums. And when the Blue Jays built the Skydome, which came out of a result of a rainy Grey Cup game, they were looking to the future. So while they're going forward, the rest of Major League Baseball started building old-style, comfortable stadiums, with the exception of Tampa, of course. And really, is there anything better than being in an old-school stadium enjoying baseball? No, of course not. And Skydome does have that kind of concrete silo feeling to it.
But they wanted Skydome, again, now known as Rogers Center. I'm going to call it Rogers Center from this point forward. They wanted it to be a 365-day-a-year venue, which you obviously can't have in a majority of these retrofit stadiums. Of course, you could put football in there, you could put soccer in there, you could put baseball in there. A lot of these stadiums are baseball-specific. So I understand from a taxpayer's perspective why maybe they wanted to go to John Q. Taxpayer in Ontario and try to get this money extracted to them. But KP, by the way, welcome to Vancouver Canadians Game Day. What do you say to a fan base that knows that their stadium is a little outdated, but if they want anything newer to appease baseball and the agents in the new era of baseball, it's going to cost you? Because here in Vancouver, I know how we felt when all of a sudden everybody said, hey, we're going to retrofit BC Place, and you're going to be on the hook for that.
I think, once again, thanks, of course, Rob, for having me on. I think if you have a winning product on the field, and the Blue Jays have been in contention the last several years, obviously this year they've gotten off to a good start. If there's that excitement in the city for the baseball team, I think that is something that you can sell. Like the team has to do well. The team has to show the commitment to trade for players that will help to get them over the top. And it has to be an exciting brand of baseball that the team has to showcase so that the fans will be excited about supporting this.
And then willing to pay.
Exactly.
Well, see, here's the problem. You've probably got about, if you were to pull the lens back to the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area, I would say you're probably looking 6 to 8% of the GTA who is a tax-paying citizen would even remotely be happy about having to pay a tax to put a new stadium in that region. Because you got to remember, we can all sit here at a sports radio station and say, surely everybody loves sports and everybody's willing to pay. But there's a lot of people that could care less about the Toronto Blue Jays putting a new stadium downtown when they see a stadium that's currently, structured and up and maybe just needs an internal retrofit instead of a whole new stadium. So to me, when I look at what Rogers will have to do if they want to maintain this ownership and they want to appease Major League Baseball, is you're probably looking at $250 million at minimum to retrofit Rogers Center. So my question would be, do you just tear the whole thing down, bite the bullet, and try to go to the Ontario government and say, yes, we want this money, we're going to fight like hell to get it? Or do you just cut corners and retrofit it and just try to clean it up a bit?
Well, I would imagine they would have one heck of a time trying to get money, because let's not forget how that stadium went. It cost, I believe, $750 million to build 27 years ago. And then the province or the city, I can't remember who owned it, sold it for $10 million. So they took a bath of over $700 million on this thing the first time. The second thing with that is, it regards retrofit. And I really don't want to beat up on BC Place, but they spent all that money retrofitting it. But when you're sitting in the seats, it's the same. The roof is different, but the seating is the same. If you're going to do something, you tear it down. Now, can they build a retro ballpark there? No, of course not. The weather will not allow it. As a matter of fact, with a roof, we've had the game postponed because of the weather. So they would definitely have to go with something with a retractable roof or permanent roof. And the trick there is now they're the sole tenant.
So, KP, when I think of the commissioner of baseball, I think of him coming into a market, and you got to remember, they're usually there for the pomp and circumstance. They're there for the good moments. Very rarely do you see a commissioner going all the way back that comes in and rips an ownership group. So, not to put you on the spot, but what do you take away when Rob Manfred walks right into your living room and says that he thinks the carpet and the paint sucks?
Sounds to me like an ultimatum. I need to, get my act together or suffer the consequences. And I don't think that, obviously there's not going to be talk of the team leaving the city or leaving town. But just like with, as you mentioned, Rob, with all these ballparks, starting with Oriole Park, Camden Yards in 92, being the first of these retro ballparks, that's a trend. And we have stadiums in places like Oakland, not to put them down anything, but Oakland, Tampa, and now Toronto. And I see the commissioner as wanting to promote the game, globally, or promote the game as much as he can. And in order to, have a successful product moving forward, you need to have a brand new stadium or go through upgrades, if you will. And that's what I'm seeing is we got to clean up the act, get our act together, have make some changes, and that's for the good of the game.
See, the problem that I have is I look at Oakland, and I understand that that's a territorial thing. They're not going to get an ounce of money from where they're at, so they want to move to Silicon Valley, and now they're just fighting to make sure that they can get in there. I'll tell you what, if the Giants were going to be a dance partner, I think that move would have already been made. So I actually think that San Francisco is saying, no. That geographic region, which we have claim to, unfortunately, is ours. You want to move somewhere else and make your fancy stadium? Go ahead, but you're not going to do it on our dime. Tampa is probably, of all the stadiums in Major League Baseball, the worst of the bunch. I think it's even worse than having the sewer bust in Oakland. That's how bad it is. It's in a bad location geographically. Nobody wants to drive all the way. They don't want to do the turnpike that takes you, at that time of day, probably about 45 minutes to an hour just to get a couple of miles. They've also got a tin can of a stadium. But where Toronto's going to feel backlash from Major League Baseball is you look at the ownership of Oakland and you realize what that is. You look at Tampa Bay, you realize that they don't have a lot of money there. Toronto if I'm reading it right, has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to what they should be able to draw from. So my question is, and this goes more than just payroll, this goes to the stadium itself. Is it because they spent too much on the NHL that now they're trying to cut corners on their major league property?
Well, I mean, you'd never get a square answer on that one, but I mean,
But that's where we come in.
well, exactly. I mean, and Manfred didn't just go after them regarding the stadium; he also went after them, for the Facebook game, because Rogers is not only the owner of the stadium and the team; they're also the broadcast rights holder, and so he went after them in two different avenues, which really was stunning for a sitting commissioner, considering that there wasn't any kind of egregious action that they took. But when it comes to the stadium thing, it's they built that thing in an age of multi-purpose stadiums, and you look around all the professional leagues now, even MLS, they're getting soccer-specific stadiums built. It's about the fan experience. You've been down the Safeco for a game. Unbelievably intimate place to watch a game. And I know you've seen games at Skydome, and it's gotten a little bit, it needs some charm. How do you retrofit it? Who knows? There are places, Windows Restaurant, what if you made that open air? Big open air patio like you see at a lot of stadiums. That could add some charm. The suite situation, don't know what you can do there, with the exception of taking away seats, which they've done, but it's not going to be a quick answer. And it also depends on just how cooperative Rogers wants to be.
Yeah, and I think that is actually the million-dollar question. They got called on the carpet, and I don't think they were ready for that comment to be said. Okay, that is Lou Filippo, KP Weiss joining us. We're going to get to our next topic, but in about 15 minutes' time, we're bringing in the clubhouse trainer for the Vancouver Canadians. And you're thinking, why would we talk to a clubby? Because when we talk about baseball, there are so many things that go into the behind-the-curtain stuff that you don't know about. And I thought today would be a great day as we're starting to talk baseball here in Vancouver. The Canadians are inching closer towards their season. I would love to talk about this both from a major league perspective, because he's worked in a major league clubhouse, and even a minor league perspective, because one of the things that's going on right now is there's a lot of people that are wondering why minor league baseball players are getting paid so little. I'm not going to touch that one straight on, but I will tell you that there are certain organizations that go to hell and high water, to the furthest extremes possible, because they know that they're not getting a lot. So they do a lot of the other things behind the scenes. Jon Stewart is one of the reasons that Vancouver in 2013 won the President's Trophy as the best overall minor league franchise in all of minor league baseball. So we're going to find out what the secret is. Why do the Vancouver Canadians treat their players so well? So there's that we'll get to in about 15 minutes' time. We will have our bullpen sessions for you at 8. We were going to have 5 different microphones open, and we're going to play that hour as if we're just hanging out at the bar, having a couple of beers, and just talking about the news of the day. So we've talked Blue Jays, and we've beaten them over the head with the club, but yet they are continuously surprising us. They weren't projected by any baseball prognosticator whatsoever to be where they are, even at the 25-game mark of the season. They are hanging around with the likes of Boston and the New York Yankees. Now, I assume that that's going to be 1-2 when everything's said and done. Mm-hmm. It'll be Boston, it'll be New York. In what order? That remains to be seen. But do you not give the Toronto Blue Jays, who, by the way, are down 5-4 in the bottom of the 9th right now, do you not give them at least a little bit of the tip of the cap of the fact that they're doing this without both Troy Tulowitzki and Josh Donaldson? KP, I will start with you. Before we get into the future of Josh Donaldson with the Blue Jays, I know you're not the hugest Jays fan, but would you not at least 25 games of the season give them a tip of the cap?
I'd say they've done very well. They've surpassed a lot of people's expectations, Rob, as you mentioned. And yeah, I mean, they in this series against Boston, they've played tough. They won the opener on the Granderson walk-off homer before losing last night, and now they're trailing, as you're saying. But you got to remember, it's still early in the season. We're still in the month of April, and anything can change. If you think about it, last year, who had the best record in baseball last year?
The Blue Jays. The Blue Jays got off to their worst start in franchise history.
The LA Dodgers won 104 games last year, and at the 20-game mark last year, they were 9-11, under 500. And so you can see, yes, I know it's they've done very well up to this point, but it's still early. We're still in April. I would say that good job. I just don't see them hanging with the big boys, as you said, like the Yankees and Red Sox.
The reason I bring this up is they're going to lose today unless something dramatic happens, and they'll go to 14-10 on the season. This without Josh Donaldson. This without Troy Tulowitzki. They're big and bigger. I mean, Troy Tulowitzki, damaged goods. There's no doubt about it. But Josh Donaldson's played but a handful of games. I'm not looking for the proverbial pat on the back, but considering where they were this time last year, the fact that they've turned this ship around and done it without two of their big components offensively, I think that's part of the reason I try to stay a little optimistic.
Absolutely. And as a baseball fan, you got to be optimistic about your team's chances because, every team starts off the season at 0-0, and you never know who's going to be, the division winner at the end of the season, and that's why you play the games. And we look at the team, let's say in the National League, like the Mets, and they had guys like Jay Bruce not hitting, Jose Reyes not hitting, Adrian Gonzalez not hitting, and Cespedes is hitting 209 as of right now, or going to tonight's action. They're in first place, and it does happen. You got good pitching, you got clutch hitting in the key spots. You could win your share of games, and every game in April is just as meaningful as every win in September. And kudos to the Blue Jays, for having that 14-10 record up to this point of the season.
Once again, just to agree with that, I mean, what they've done so far, considering what they're missing, is great. It's a good start, and it's certainly going to assist them carrying some momentum going into the summer. But the warning signs are all over the place with this team.
Yep.
I mean, okay, not including tonight, okay, they've only had 6 quality starts all year. And really, I think we can all agree that the quality start really is quite a watered-down statistic. It basically means if you're a mediocre pitcher, you get a quality start. They've had 6 out of 23. Now, Stroman will get better.
Well, before you go on, let's explain what a quality start is. Quality start is 6 innings of work with 3 earned runs or less.
Correct.
That is, by baseball standards, considered what a quality start is. So, again, they're about 24 games into the season, and you've said that there's 6.
6.
That's a problem.
That's a huge problem. And their bullpen has been fantastic. But if your starters don't start to chew up some innings, you're going to start to wear that bullpen down. And then all of a sudden, those leads that you carry in late will start to disappear. Some of the older players that they've filled in spots have been, better than advertised. But baseball as a numbers game, everything kind of averages out. Stroman will get better. Sanchez will get better. But by that same token, Granderson's going to get less reliable. And they need Tulowitzki and Donaldson to come back, not just in good shape, but basically at peak in order to keep carrying this through.
The Blue Jays need Josh Donaldson back. Josh Donaldson needs Josh Donaldson back because there's a lot of things at play here.
Yep.
Blue Jays need to fatten the pig in case they're going to make a move on him before he goes and tests the free agent market. Josh Donaldson needs innings and at-bats so that he can go out and get max value because nobody wants to buy the glass on the shelf that's got a little bit of a crack in it. So that's the problem. All right, gentlemen, we will see you at 8 o'clock. We're going to take a break. When we come back, again, both KP and Lou will be back here as a part of our bullpen sessions between 8 and 9 where we bring everybody all together. But on the other side of the break, Vancouver Canadians, and I don't say this lightly, have no problem going above and beyond. So minor league baseball right now, it's kind of taking it on the chin right now because some of the players are said that they don't get paid enough. And you could talk about this with Major League Baseball, the Players Union. That's bigger fish than we're willing to fry here. But that said, the Vancouver Canadians go above and beyond. But I wanted you to hear it from the guy that actually has to lace up his shoes every morning to go above and beyond. John Stewart, the clubhouse manager for the Vancouver Canadians. Trust me, clubbies have the best stories. We'll get to his next, right here on TSN 1040. John Stewart, the clubhouse manager of the mighty Vancouver Canadians, joins me. Stewie, how are you, fella?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm better now, man. I'm better now. Nothing like hanging out with KP and Lou for half an hour.
Right?
But, hey, onward and upward. KP's like, I hate you. So
Let's start.
we were talking just before we went to the break about the fact that, and I don't think it's my place to even speak to this with regards to what's going on between minor league baseball players, those who think they deserve more money and whatever. I mean, do I think they're worth more money? Yeah, but I think there's a lot of different jobs that are worth more than what they get paid. So those fights will go to those who are willing to fight. I just wanted to see, from your perspective, before we get into things that make ballparks tick and all that kind of stuff, The Vancouver Canadians have a fantastic track record of treating their players very, very well.
Agreed.
You followed a guy, Glenn Hall, that did it for nearly a decade. He obviously gave you a couple of the tricks of the trade, but you did it within the Astros organization and now within the Blue Jays organization.
Yes.
What makes a good experience for a young player coming through?
It just takes somebody that cares, I think. It takes an organization that cares all the way, though. I mean, it takes right from the very top down to the very bottom. And that's something that the Canadians do really, really well is, whether it be with the host families, whether it be how we take care of the coaches really well with their housing and the partnership that we have with Carter Honda. And then in the clubhouse.
And the relationship with Carter Honda is they basically get provided a car for the
Yes.
summer as well.
Yeah.
So not to stop you there, but let's set the stage here. So these players, they've been drafted. Some of them get their signing bonus, some of them don't. Some of them sign for a lot, some of them don't.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden they show up in Vancouver. They don't know where they're staying. They don't know what they're eating. They don't know where they're driving or going to. They're just basically here to play baseball.
Yeah, in a different
It's-
country.
In a different country.
Yes.
So it's on you
Yeah.
amongst the Canadians organization, but it's really on you to kind of orchestrate how this all looks. How does it all look in the first 24 to 48 hours?
It's a zoo. It's a whirlwind. It's an absolute tornado at first. As soon as the players come off of the airplane and get to the stadium, the very first practice that we have, where we have to get all the players uniformed. It's just a zoo in there. But that's one of the most fun days is seeing the guys that came back from last year and meeting all the new guys and getting to see how the shape of the team is going to be.
I've always said that the bus is one of the places that is the most enjoyable. And it's funny because it came to the forefront here in Canadian media recently, unfortunately under tragic circumstances, talking about the Humboldt Broncos and those kids who lost their lives and those who stayed alive but still have a long road back, to mental health and physical health. But the bus is really one of two places that I think in baseball is kind of, off limits to the general public. The other is the clubhouse.
Right.
So I can speak to the bus. You could speak to the bus and the clubhouse. So
Yes.
when you go into a clubhouse, I wonder if there were similarities between that and the bus. Because in the bus, I've always said that the bus is moved into three areas. You have your second-year players and the guys that are high-end draft picks near the front. They're, picking the brains of the coaching staff. The middle guys are kind of, the jokesters and, the glue guys. And then in the back, you have the Dominican kids. But it's true. And I don't want to say it from a segregation. I don't want to bring up a racial tone to this.
I know
but
you're not.
You talk about a language barrier. You talk about a comfort. You talk about all those things that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about different languages. You're talking about different thought processes and what matters. What's the hardest thing for you to address?
The language barrier is probably the most difficult thing to address, I would say. What makes the job easy for me, or not easy, but it makes it easier for me and what makes me feel more comfortable is the fact that I played baseball collegiately myself, just as you did. And the best part of baseball for me, I mean, my skill was moderate at best, but the best part of playing was the camaraderie, was the bus rides, was hanging out in the locker room with the guys and practicing with the guys. And that's what makes being a clubhouse manager so exciting for me is getting to feel that on a regular basis and getting to call it my job.
Your job entails the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes.
Before we get to the ugly,
There's not much.
everybody's got one or two. Maybe that's not for radio, but is there a moment where you thought to yourself, this might be the coolest job in town?
Yeah, early on, like when I started out my professional baseball working career in Greenville, Tennessee, in the Appalachian League with the Houston Astros organization, rookie ball. And I knew as soon as I got into town, and as soon as my first night that I was in Greenville, I slept in the stadium. They didn't have my hotel room ready for me yet, so I slept in the stadium. I slept in the locker room, and I knew right then and there that it was going to be a good setup for sure. I ended up staying in the stadium the entire summer.
You lived in a baseball stadium.
I did. I lived in the clubhouse the entire summer.
So you didn't even bother getting an apartment?
No. After the second day, they still didn't have an apartment ready for me, and I suggested that I just stay in the locker room for the whole year, and that's what I did. Air conditioning, Wi-Fi,
A shower?
12
Eat what
heads,
you
turn
want.
them all into the center.
Did you actually?
Yes.
Good for you. When I look at the Vancouver Canadians players, they obviously come into a ballpark that's a little older.
Yep.
That is half of the charm from the fan experience, but from a player's experience. What do you hear?
Oh, they love it. They absolutely love it. And what they love is the fact that we can have a nooner on a Thursday afternoon and the place is absolutely packed with 6,000 people. No other stadium that you go to in the minor leagues would you get something quite like that, especially not at short season single A. The players just love the stadium for how loud it is. I mean, the crowd is right on top of the field. They can definitely feel it, and I don't think there's a question that the crowd over the years has won at least a couple games for us here and there. The players know it.
Do you ever have food issues as far as like players that, because I think of a major league clubby and I think of a minor league clubby. In minor league clubbies, you basically are building to bulk. You're building to size. Where in the major leagues, you're building to individuality. And everybody's got their own set of things. And their wife is flying in next week or their kids are flying in next week and all that stuff. But when you do it from a minor league perspective, is it just one shoe fits all, or how does it look from your perspective? How much do you cater to the individual player?
We try and keep the meals as mixed up as we can, and we're really fortunate at Nat Bailey Stadium to be partnered up with Aramark, our food and beverage providers, who actually do our player meals. And I know you've sampled them before.
I sampled every one ever. It's unfortunate.
Our chef, Dallas Benz, does an incredible job. Mixes in all sorts of different cuisine. There's some Latin meals in there as well, which are easily the most popular. We even did a build-your-own poutine bar this year, which we actually passed. We got the check of
the Blue Jays approved a poutine bar.
The Blue Jays approved it. Yeah,
really.
It was tough, but we got it through.
Well, this is the thing I wanted to bring up because I don't know if a lot of listeners realize how far the Toronto Blue Jays have progressed with their health and their dieting and all the stuff that comes with it. Back in the old days, it was you smoked in the dugout steps and what have you. The Blue Jays in 2017, 2018 really got serious about their menu. What does that look like?
It is, it's dead serious, and it's a big deal. There's no question about that, and you can see it right from the minor league complex in Dunedin. The food it's fuel for the players. It's incredibly important. I mean, you don't spend all this money on a Lamborghini and then put regular fuel into it, right? I mean, it's got to be. These are players that a lot of money is invested into them, and so they need to be fed properly. And it starts at a young level, and by the time that they get to be AAA, the 40-man roster to the majors, by then, having gone all the way up through the system, by rights, they should have like a really good idea on what to eat every day.
Is the rumor true that they will have a dietitian that will travel with them this year?
I don't think it's going to happen at the short season levels, but I mean, from Lansing up, yeah, there's a dietitian that is at each affiliate city, yeah. That's a fact.
And their sole job is to make sure that the players are hydrated and eat right.
And eating properly, yeah.
Because I find, why I find that almost comical? And I say this lovingly. Because you know how many times I've sat down with a player at 1:30 in the morning at Denny's?
Yep.
And trust me, I don't think there's too many things on the Denny's menu that would fulfill the dietitian's prerequisites.
There's only so much you can do. But if you can, and I'm not trying to speak on behalf of the Blue Jays high performance department or anything like that, but if at least parameters can be set if the players can be educated, then I think that there's value in that for sure.
John Stewart, Vancouver Canadians clubhouse manager, joining us here on TSN. I've wanted to bring you in for a long time, Stewie, because to me these are kind of the cool stories that we don't get to hear of a lot. So each year the Toronto Blue Jays, well, since you've been with us, have invited you down to the big spring training.
Yeah.
Which is where you get to hang out and rub shoulders with the big boys. Without getting into stories that I know that you're not allowed to tell or is sacrilege to tell, any brushes with greatness where you sat and you thought, that was pretty cool?
Yes, a lot of them on a daily basis. It's the best 2 weeks of my year going down to spring training, and I'm so fortunate that I get to do it. As you know, but the Blue Jays spring training is set up into, there's a minor league complex where all the minor league players are, and then 10 minutes down the road is the major league stadium. And for 90% of the time, the major league players stay over at the major league stadium. But on occasion, for various reasons, they do stop by the minor league complex. And the first place that they stop by is the equipment room, where all the clubhouse managers generally hang out. And they always pay their respects to Billy Wardlow, who's my my boss with the Blue Jays minor league equipment coordinator. They always stop by and hang out with us for a little bit, and that's really fun.
Do you ever move some guy's bat and you shouldn't move his bat? Do you move a glove and he shouldn't move a glove? Like, are there certain players on the current Blue Jay roster, be they minor league or major league, that are very particular about their particular items?
There are also guys that are super not particular about their items at all. Joe Biagini was over at the minor league camp just towards the end of spring training, and he was getting a taxi to his hotel or something like that. And just because I thought he was a big leaguer, I should probably take his suitcase and take it out to the taxi, because I'd seen the taxi through the door. And I just took his taxi. I took his suitcase, and you could hear him saying, "Well, there goes my suitcase," and he just kind of just kind of chased after me.
You've also had the chance to rub shoulders with Vladimir Guerrero Jr.,
Yes,
who is the hottest prospect that I think I've seen the Blue Jays have in a generation. I mean, realistically, go down the line of blue chip guys that they've had, and there have been a few, but I don't know if any that have had the magnetism of him. What is it about him from your perspective, being in contact with him to that level? What makes him so special?
I couldn't get over the size of him, first of all.
Big
He's
kid.
Huge kid, thick. I mean, he's listed at 200. We were asking him about that. Said he's closer to 250, which I don't doubt for a second. The guy is thick.
So he's listed at 2,
Yeah,
but
look
even
it up.
he admits that
Oh
he's
yeah,
250.
there's no chance he's 2. No. But
It's good to know. It's good to know.
the fact that he is, I mean, now with Acuna in Atlanta, now Guerrero is the #1 prospect in baseball, still in the minor leagues, carries himself as such a good teammate, not aloof at all, mixes it right in there with everybody else, doesn't act like, you wouldn't know that he was the #1 prospect in baseball just by looking at the way that he acts. I can say that for sure.
Because he comes from, obviously, the pedigree. His father's Vladimir Guerrero, hence the junior. But there's Kevin Biggio. There's a Casey Clemens.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a handful of guys that have, Bo Bichette, that all have this weird pedigree and this weird DNA back to some pretty good baseball players. They hang around together at spring training. Like Bo and Vladdy are pretty inseparable for the most part, at least when they're out on the field. Does that work its way into the clubhouse as well, or do they go their separate ways?
Not so much. It's not like their lockers are beside each other or anything like that. It's alphabetical order. So, B and G aren't super close to each other.
Oh, okay.
But no, they don't hang out. I don't say that they're best friends like in the clubhouse, but they are definitely two guys that are going to be, they're going to go up together, and they're going to be a pair for a really long time. There's no question about that. And you talk about Biggio and Clemens as well, and those are two guys that we've had in Vancouver. And you talk about two guys that just get it, and it's so plainly obvious that they've grown up in a clubhouse. And what a good idea! Why not draft guys whose dads were really good? It just makes sense.
It usually works. We had Jeremy Barfield for a year.
It doesn't always work.
He was good. He was okay. He had a grand slam for us one year that was pretty special. John Stewart is going to join us for one more segment before we get to our bullpen sessions at 8 o'clock. Niall O'Donoghue is going to be here. Stephen Von Voot's going to be here. But when we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to make it more about Baseball Canada, because John Stewart has the opportunity. He's one of the most 100 influential Canadians in all of baseball, according to Bob Elliott. Well, it's all right. I pay him.
No.
No, I don't. I should to get higher. So not that kind of higher. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about it from Baseball Canada's perspectives. I've been pretty critical about Baseball Canada because I sit here and I say to myself, you've got all these great baseball players. You can't lock them in for the major tournaments. And then I look at it from a marketing perspective and say, knock, knock, who's there? No one. Baseball Canada's marketing needs to get better, and I think they might have finally got the memo. John Stewart will break that down with me next. This is Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered, as always, by Booster Juice on TSN 1040. Vancouver Canadians clubhouse manager, kind of the jack of all trades. Every organization needs one. And I decided, you know what, he's only worked 10 hours. Why not bring him on and make him work some more? John Stewart, kind enough to join me. Stewie, before we get into, again, more of the deal with Baseball Canada, the Blue Jays, the Canadians, your love for baseball starts pretty early. You're an Eastern guy. You played a little collegiate baseball. To those who don't know much about John Stewart, your passion for baseball began where?
It began at home in Brighton, Ontario, which is about 2 hours east of Toronto. I grew up on a dairy farm in Eastern Ontario.
You can milk a cow.
I can, yes. Yeah. twice a day.
So I don't have a
5:30
follow-up,
in the
actually.
morning.
That's all I had. Can you-
It's not like I was getting up early and milking cows first thing in the morning or anything like that.
Well, some guys will milk that, no pun intended, but they'll try to, get more out of that.
I'm allergic to cows.
Get out.
I'm allergic to hay and straw, and my dad says I'm allergic to hard work, so I don't make a very good dairy farmer
Well, I don't
at
know
all.
how you got the job that you got. You're working hard every day. I look at where Baseball Canada is right now. Then this is all the amateur guys. And I saw the junior national team down at spring training for the couple of weeks that they were down there. I think they were over the minor league complex a couple of times as well. I have a real soft spot for Baseball Canada because I know that their heart's in the right place, and I know that they don't get the funding, they don't have a lot of the backing that they probably need to become an elite country when it comes to developing prospects. And you could talk about Tristan Pompey and all the guys over the last couple of years that have still kept Baseball Canada on the map. But why do you think, from your estimation, not to put you on the spot, but why do you think Baseball Canada just can't seem to get over with the fans here nationally? We know they're there. We can hardly put a face to them, but we know we have to cheer for them.
It's hockey. I think it's a hockey country first and foremost, and hockey will always trump all. And if we're talking junior national baseball, junior national hockey is everything. Come Christmas time, come that Boxing Day tournament, it's just not on the forefront like that.
By the way, I think half of us here right now are shell-shocked. We're looking at the TV screens. $1:30 left to go in the first period, and Vegas is up 4-0. 4-0 on San Jose. They've only given up 3 goals the entire NHL playoffs. I'm going to Vegas in 2 weeks, and I think I might have to get a ticket, knock on wood, because they might still be playing. But you talk about hockey, and this might be the perfect thing. We're on a baseball show, something hockey comes up on the TV, and 5 sets of eyes all of a sudden start looking at the hockey screen. But I think my problem with Baseball Canada is you've had plenty of time to build off of Jeff Francis, Adam Lowen, Justin Morneau, Larry Walker, if you really want to go back a little bit, Jason Bay, Ryan Dempster. I mean, I could do the roll call if I wanted to. But the reality is I just still feel that they're a mom-and-pop operation. And I don't feel that a national program that in the last 20 years that has had that much player identification should still be scuffling the way that Baseball Canada is. Is it because, A, they don't have a true bona fide home? Or is it because they're marketing? I mean, what do you see from your perspective as far as why they struggle to put a face to their brand?
The home is almost Florida, in the springtime. I think that's one of the great things. The fact that they don't really have a home, again, because it's really the baseball season obviously is a limited time in Canada, so they have to go down to Florida to spring training. I think that it's great that they're able to at least do that and play exhibition games against professionals. I mean, I think that's a great way, and these are high school kids. It's a great way to prepare them for the collegiate level, and I think it's still coming. I think that the names are still coming. The Bo Naylors and guys like that. They're coming along the way.
I mean, you look at a guy like Tyler O'Neill and Shore, but man,
we're never going to be America.
But see, this is the thing that I disagree with. You can be America because if you're looking at Baseball Canada and comparing it to all of the players that they've had come through over the last 10, 15, 20 years. Why wouldn't you showcase that more? It just feels like they run their course, they're put out to pasture, they go to stud, and then you just kind of hope that something else kind of just randomly comes down the pipe. For me, I don't know, maybe I look at it from a PR perspective. I look at it from marketing. Every once in a while, they'll put out a video, and it's like, oh, cool. Sportsnet's doing a story on, the junior national team. But it's got to be more in your face. It's got to be more consistent. And I think they've got to get more buyback from their players than just showing up once a year at an annual shindig to do that. Like, to me, that's a 12-month-a-year job. And I don't know, I guess just from your perspective, and I think it's a cool perspective because you work behind the scenes. You see these players. You hang out with an Andrew Case or a Matty Lee Romanen. I mean, guys that do have ties to national programs and at least, being drafted. And I don't know. I feel like there's a void there. I feel like there's something missing. I'm not trying to compare myself to the United States.
No.
But when you go to the World Baseball Classic and get your lunch handed to you every 4 years.
With Freddie Freeman.
Well, you sit there and you say to yourself, I mean, are we really just that team that once every 20 years catches lightning in a bottle and wins a Pan Am? Like, is that good enough? Because I can tell you who's not buying stock of them, the corporate sector.
No.
So that, to me, is – I always say this. If you're doing things right, people invest in you. The coin comes in. But if you're scuffling for money and you don't have the investors, then there's obviously something at play there. And I don't know. I guess, like I said, you saw them down there for 2 weeks. They were asking for all kinds of favors. Like, hey, can you hook me up? Can you do me a solid? Legit programs don't ask favors. They walk through the front door and they say, hey, we're here to play. That, to me, is a challenge. But again, I digress. Okay, before we're finished, obviously the Vancouver Canadians just a couple of weeks away. I want to talk a little bit about, again, what leads into this, because this is going to be one of the conversation pieces that we'll have at the 8 o'clock hour. For example, what makes a good ballpark? Because Rob Manfred came forward and ripped the Blue Jays. He ripped them more from the brass as opposed to what they're doing on the field. But nonetheless, I think everybody here in Vancouver feels pretty good about Scotiabank Field at Nat Bailey Stadium. But I want to get an individual's perspective, be it Vancouver, be it Ottawa, be it, any of the venues that you've been to. What's the X factor? What brings all the boys to the yard?
I think it's the people, first and foremost. It's the employees of the building, because what will happen from that is the people will have pride in the building, and the building will be clean, and they will be welcoming people. I think that's what makes a really great venue. It's the people that work in it, and we're really lucky here in Vancouver. We've got an outstanding staff, and that starts from Andy Dunn and Jake Kerr and Jeff Mooney and goes all the way down. That's really what makes it work, I think, is the people, the cleanliness, the presentation of the ballpark. I think that's what makes it.
So when you walk through a venue, that's what you're looking for.
And when you
ushers and people that'll shake your hand and guide you to your seat, those things matter?
They do matter. I think they do matter. I think that they're overlooked, but I think that the organizations that do it right are consistent in their ability to use those things to their advantage.
What can you do in the final couple of weeks here to maybe help put yourself over the top? Because the one thing I learned from Billy Wardlow is you've got to be the guy that can go out and get stuff that the other guy can't get. You're basically the concierge for professional athletes and the coaching staff, which is, honestly, in my estimation, one of the coolest parts of the ballpark.
It is.
Two-part question. One, what's the craziest thing you've ever been asked for? And the other one is, between now and then, what are you trying to get locked in so that the players can have a better experience than ever before?
I'll answer the latter part of the question first. The stadium is in a really good spot right now. The locker room is going to get some improvements to it this year. We're going to get new carpeting down into the locker room because it's so champagne soaked from all the championships that we've won.
Nice plug. Thank you very much. You should take my job in PR. That's impressive.
So we've got new carpeting coming in on both sides, actually, and we're going to spruce them up a little bit. We've got a brand new extension to our weight room for the players so that they can recover from the games a whole lot easier. We're expanding our weight room 30 feet. That's something that our groundskeeper at the stadium, Ross Barron, and myself have been working on for the last couple weeks, and it's been a really fun project. So getting those kind of things ready for the players and being able to send a few pictures down to Florida every once in a while and show the guys just kind of what's happening. I think they're pretty excited to see what it's going to look like. Those guys, like the staff that we know are coming back.
They want to get out of the heat.
Oh, do they ever? They're so excited when they get here.
What makes a good manager? I would love to get this from your perspective. I've had some good experiences with managers. I've had some tough ones with certain managers as well, who I'll, of course, leave nameless. But
of course.
What makes a good manager? Because you deal with those guys intimately as well.
I think that a good manager, the players buy into what he's selling. A good manager is a good salesman. A good manager is someone who can relate to the players. And I mean, Rich Miller, old in terms of a baseball career, definitely in the latter years of his
More
baseball.
than 40 years.
Yeah, absolutely. But still very relatable to the players, and what he said really resonated with them. When there were post-game meetings, every single game, win or lose, sometimes they were 45 seconds, sometimes they were 15 minutes long, depending. But what he said really resonated with the players. It really stuck with them. And I've seen that from a couple of really good managers that I've worked with now. I've had the opportunity in 3 years of professional baseball now to work with 2 managers that were manager of the year, which is fortunate. I'm so lucky to have that, to have worked beside 2 really good managers in Rich Miller and Josh Bonifay in the Houston organization, who's now their minor league field coordinator.
So he's obviously a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
You know, Rich Miller's, when they claimed the first half pennant down at Salem, his speech is one for the ages. You can find it on YouTube if you look up Vancouver Canadians first half pennant. Buddy, I appreciate you doing this, man. I know it was already a long day. You got lots to do. You came in here looking the part as well, so I thank you for doing this. John Stewart, Vancouver Canadians clubhouse manager. You can see him down at the ballpark probably more than any other employee the entire summer. Stewie, thanks for doing this, man.
Thank you very much, Rob.
We are going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to go to the Bullpen Sessions, where we bring 5 baseball minds together and try to debate the best topics of the day, the week, the month, the season. This is Vancouver Canadians Game Day on TSN 1040. NFL draft is well underway. The Vegas Golden Knights are just absolutely trampling San Jose 4-0 last I checked. And we're a day from the Toronto Maple Leafs getting executed at the hands of the Boston Bruins. We call this the Bullpen Sessions, and this is kind of where I want you to close your eyes for, well, not if you're driving. I want you to just kind of look and keep your eye on the road, but I want you to imagine that you're sitting in a bullpen. You know, there's 8 or 9 guys, and the game's going on, and, you know, you're there in the bullpen, and you're just talking the talk and just chewing the fat, and we've brought back Lou Filippo, KP Weed. We've also got Steven Von Voot. We've also got Niall O'Donohoe. So we're going to do 5 guys all shooting the breeze on a variety of baseball-related topics. We call this the Bullpen Session. So, gentlemen, I will open it up to topic number 1. Lou, I will start with you. And I know that you're not a guy that takes freebies when it comes to going to the ballpark very often, but there are 30 major league venues, everywhere from, of course, Rogers Center in Toronto. You can go down to San Francisco, Arizona, Safeco. You can go to the beautiful ones in the Midwest. You can go down to the Miami, where you want to go. What makes a ballpark great?
It is the atmosphere once you're inside the walls. Baseball is one of those games where through the course of the season, because it is so long, you're going to have a whole bunch of dogs and you're going to have some exciting games. But what it's like when you're in the park, what's going on between the pitches, between the innings, is the food good? Do they have a good selection of beverages? That's what makes it entertainment. You go to the game and you feel like you've actually spent a good 2 to 3 hours of valuable time. But all of that stuff goes into it. I mean, that's one of the things that has really made the C's so successful is at the end of the day, if you were literally to put a curtain over the field, you're actually still going to have a really, really good time at the ball game.
Well, for myself, what I love about baseball more than any other sport, every stadium is different. It's not like hockey. It's basically 200 by 85. There's no real big differences between rinks, but baseball stadiums, there's always something different. And speaking about Nat Bailey Stadium, I love the fact they have a manual scoreboard. I love the fact they have one now next to the scoreboard, next to the press box, I should say. They added that a couple of years ago. I think that's great. So basically, no matter where you are, you know where the score is. And that's what I really like about Nat Bailey.
And that's what, like you mentioned, the scoreboard, it just contributes to the vibe of the stadium. So the fans don't have to just concentrate on every pitch during the game. You know, it contributes to the vibe. So if, say, in Fenway Park, like you got the green monster out there and left, that just adds to the whole vibe of the game.
I tend to agree with Lou here in terms of the atmosphere because I think, and I'm not going to talk about in minor league baseball because, when people go to the games, it's about the experience. It's about fan experience. It's about entertainment. You're not going to have everybody that's in the ballpark, focus on the game. They want to be entertained. They want to be entertained between innings. Mascots, things like that, food that was mentioned earlier. And nowadays we have different ballparks in every sport actually coming up with different new creative menu items to cater to the fan experience because guys that come to the ballpark, whether it's baseball, and we're talking baseball here, obviously, they want to try out different types of food and be entertained for the duration of the 3 hours.
Well, let's pick that up because I think you bring up a really good point. I don't want to lose that train of thought. When you go to said baseball field, and let's pull the lens back and cover all of North America. Mm-hmm. When you go to St. Louis, do you want to try the barbecue? When you're going to San Francisco and Seattle, do you want to have something that's got clam chowder or something indigenous to that area? When you go to a ballpark, are you expecting not just the standard, fare, but you want something that is that is very specific to that region as well. Does that count for it, or you don't care as long as there's hot dog and fries?
Absolutely. Anytime I've been to a ballpark, once you've got your seat, the very first thing you do is you're checking out the menu items for something that is different. Now, I'm not having the crickets at Safeco. That's out of my league.
Those they do have grasshoppers, right?
They're delicious.
Or garlic fries.
Rob, you remember when the 2-footer came out, and it was like half the people thought it was going to bomb, and it sold out.
Dude,
and
our 3-footer is a big seller.
I haven't had the 3-footer yet, but I mean, I know those of us who were working, with the team at the time, we were actually timing ourselves to see who could finish that thing off. I mean, it was one of those challenges, and I know a lot of people who went to the game, and it's like, I'm having that hot dog.
Okay, before you guys go on, there's only one guy at this table of 5 that has actually taken on a 3-footer and finished it. It's KP. Of all 5 of us, it was KP. We challenged him. We said, can you do this? And take me through eating a 3-foot hot dog. What does that look like?
Well, first of all, the rules stipulated that I wasn't allowed to have any water or any condiments.
Well, you can't eat that with condiments anyway. That's the big mistake everybody
Who
makes.
would say such a mean thing?
But, just to be a good sport, I did try, and it was exhausting. By the second inning, I was exhausted, and I didn't know if I could survive. But it took at least 4 innings, to go through the whole thing, and it was very memorable for sure.
Weak.
Wow, that's a birdie putt applause right there. That doesn't happen very often.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I usually tend to eat before I go to a game anyway. I don't know. To me, it's not the number one thing. Yeah, for me, it's just looking around the ballpark, seeing what's anything historical, anything quirky. Like manual scoreboards are great. The atmosphere, just seeing like say Safeco Field, you can always see the traffic going by, and it's kind of cool. And I don't know. That's kind of things I kind of look for when I go to a stadium for the first time.
Yeah, when I'm going to Safeco, I want the crickets, I want the garlic fries, I want the $10 big, huge can of beer, and then I want to take in the game. Safeco's vibe is really cool. It's really intimate, like you guys mentioned earlier. And just like the Nat, too. Really intimate crowd that really just contributes to the vibe of the ballpark.
If you were to take a Major League Baseball stadium and put it in Vancouver, which of the 30 do you think would be the most attractive to a Vancouverite?
Fenway Park. No, sorry,
Really?
not Fenway. Sorry, Wrigley Field. And the only reason I say that is if you've been to Wrigley and you look at its footprint, it's the same size as Nat Bailey. The seats are just higher. It'll fit right in that spot. And it's the kind of look at Nat Bailey.
That's it. I wasn't expecting a Wrigley. I thought we'd go bigger, crazier, down by the water.
No. Wrigley Field. Wrigley Field is an old-style ballpark. And one of the great things about Nat Bailey is you're there underneath the grandstand, getting your food, getting your drink, and then you walk out, and it's like you've gone from something that is harkens back to the 50s and 60s when it was built, and then boom, there's baseball, and that's what Wrigley's like.
Really?
Well, I think I would like a Pittsburgh PNC Park style of a stadium here.
Okay, now to those who are listening who haven't seen Pittsburgh, what makes that stadium so appealing to you?
It's very intimate. It's very close. I like the scoreboard, the way they set it up. I mean, you also have the Three Rivers in the background. It really is a beautiful stadium. If you can somehow incorporate that near a body of water, I think, a park like that, I think by far it's the best park in the major leagues.
Knock down Science World.
Oh, yeah, because that land is so cheap right there, right? Would be something, though, wouldn't it? KP, we'll get yours, and then I'll give you my thought on that. Where would you go?
I would say if we can bring the high altitude, how about Coors Field? You can see a lot of.
But you've got to bring the atmosphere with it. I don't know if that was where we were going with this one. Okay, let me say this. I want this to be the second part of the question. If you couldn't have it at 33rd Ontario, which of course is where Scotiabank Field at Nat Bailey Stadium is, what plot of land in the Lower Mainland would you put your stadium at? Because I mean, Science World, fine, thank you very much. It's close to a SkyTrain line, which I could see the appeal to that as well. I mean, and the backdrop would be the stuff of legend. But it's a backdrop that everybody sports-wise is already really familiar with. I'm thinking outside the box. I'll start with this one. I say where they had Empire Field.
Absolutely.
Or part of the Empire Stadium.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about that.
100%.
Just beyond the left field fence would be the roller coaster. Just beyond the center and the right field fence would be the mountains of the North Shore. You're close to a major artery in Vancouver, which is Highway 1. You've probably got half-decent transit at that point. That, to me, would be an absolute blockbuster of I don't know if there's anybody that disagrees with me here. KP,
No.
I can disagree with that one.
KP's like King George in 104.
No, it's an absolute no-brainer. Quite frankly, that's where they should have built the soccer football stadium, is right there. I mean, it's such a natural setting because it's in a ravine. Like, you cannot beat it.
I don't know. For the years that they had the BC Lions here in the Whitecaps, I enjoyed it immensely. And I know that the stadium wasn't for the long. It was basically built on scaffolding and got through what it was while they did the renovation. But as I look at how much the BC Lions pay in rent and all the stuff that they owe to Pavco and all the government stuff, I wonder if there couldn't be a reincarnation of that. Like, is that completely out of question that the BC Lions or somebody doesn't say, you know what, screw it, we'll go right back there, because that was a pretty good setup?
I also wonder maybe I know what the Vancouver Giants, when they were looking, before they relocated to Langley, they were looking at Surrey, I guess, the Scott Road area, and there seems to be some available land out there. I think that, and again, that's pretty close to SkyTrain traffic. So I don't know. Maybe that's another suggestion.
But
we're
we're a world-class city, right?
Yeah,
we're looking for backdrop. Backdrop is a part of the appeal, is it not? Like, you go to certain venues and you look beyond the home run fence and it's a barren wasteland. But then you go to Pittsburgh or you go to certain venues like Minnesota and you have the city's backdrop right there. That, to me, is a part of the cachet. And I think Vancouver, with the mountains and that huge skyline that they got, I mean, that to me would be, that's can't miss television, that's can't miss showing up to the ballpark. I'd be shocked if that wasn't a winner.
Would you need a dome in Vancouver?
For a major league team?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, there's no question you would have to have a dome. We just went through April.
That's right.
I mean, let's and that wasn't like little spit here and there. That was some serious rain.
Could you have it like maybe Safeco Field, where it's still outdoor but it's still indoor?
Yeah,
I think that would be the best thing.
Yeah, that would work as well. But you definitely have to have a roof. Any major league team in a summer sport that covers those areas in Canada, be it Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver,
Minnesota,
anybody else, you have to have
Minnesota
a roof.
Freezing.
They went outdoors for their new one.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Like, what?
Well,
that is
they're
crazy.
Tough.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah,
They're
They're
tough.
tough. Yeah.
Yeah, as Lou said, with the weather we just had in in the last few weeks, and the season is now the season starts now late March, and you can't have like rainouts. The first month of the season, you have to have a roof, whether it's retractable. You can't have like an open air stadium in Vancouver if you're talking about Major League Baseball.
Not a chance.
Okay, before we finish up the thought on the stadium, what is one ballpark fare item? We're talking food here because it seems that we're all coming back to food. Maybe we're all hungry, haven't all gone out for dinner yet tonight. What's one thing that you would bring to a venue that they don't have in Vancouver? It seemed like over the last couple of years with the Canucks, they brought in sushi, they brought in bowls, which are kind of like the trendy thing. What do they call those bowls that everybody's eating nowadays? The poke bowls or whatever they're called. Yeah, those are kind of the hot things right now that are popping up all throughout sport. What is one thing that you would bring with you to even a place like Nat Bailey Stadium, who's known for hot dogs and just basic fare? Is there one thing you think that venue or most venues in Vancouver just don't seem to have?
There seems to be a growing explosion of a couple of different types of food in Vancouver, aside from the poke. Ramen is going crazy, and also tacos. A good fish taco, like you get in San Diego, would be just an awesome...
Could you imagine ramen sitting in your seat
No,
and the guy beside
I'm
you
just
starts slurping away on ramen? I would lose my mind.
But tacos would work.
Yeah,
Tacos would work.
Yeah, fair enough.
Tacos would work. You eat it in your hand.
I like taco trucks. Don't they have that down at pardon me, where do the Seahawks play? I forget the name of the field.
CenturyLink.
Yes. They have a couple of trucks that are actually on the property, and that I'm kind of down with that. I'd be all right with that in that kind of format and stuff. But okay, tacos, I'm good with it. I'm good. Yeah, so far so good.
The only thing I can think of off the top of my head was that huge, when I went to Safeco Field last year, a huge batting helmet of nachos. I mean, oh my God, that was, and also chicken and fries, whatever. I mean, just huge. I mean, you don't have to eat for the rest of the day or the next
I had a
week.
hamburger in Eugene. It was a Krispy Kreme donut, 2 patties, cheese, another 2 patties,
Oh my God.
and another Krispy Kreme donut,
They know
and
how,
bacon.
They know how to do food in Oregon.
Yeah, no,
For-
they did.
for-
But
for-
think about
for-
that.
for-
4 patties, 2 donuts, and slabs of bacon. KP, what would you bring?
I wouldn't mind having calamari. I don't think that's available at the ballpark.
Calamari, wow. For the refined.
Yes.
Skewer sticks. I'm down with that.
Actually, on the skewers, you know what? Actually, literally like Asian style street food skewers would be kind of neat.
Oh, yeah,
Just have
yeah.
the grill going and the skewers on there. That would actually be pretty cool too.
Who in a 95-degree day is going to sit in their seat and eat calamari?
Bring it to the press box.
Okay, that's not an
having
open
some.
invitation. Okay. I knew we'd get one. I'm so glad that I asked you, KP. That's brilliant.
Foie gras, please.
Foie gras. All right, we're going to take a break here. 20 minutes after. Isn't that like chopped up kidney livers or something like that? That's nasty too. All right, we're going to take a break here. Some French guy's like, it's the best. We'll take a break here. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. Josh Donaldson. It's been about 25 games now, 1 of 24 if you're splitting hairs, and he has not been a big part of the Toronto Blue Jays equation. What would you do if you're the Toronto Blue Jays with Josh Donaldson? We'll answer that. We'll ask how much longer you can possibly hold Vladimir Guerrero back from the major leagues if he keeps hitting 350 at Double-A New Hampshire. We'll talk a little bit about the Blue Jays and their prospects and the prospects of what you do with Josh Donaldson. And if Josh Donaldson likes calamari, we'll have to see if he likes that. All right, this is Rob Fay Nation Radio. This is also Vancouver Canadians Game Day. It is all on TSN 1040. Donaldson going into a contract here where, of course, he's going to get big money from somebody. The question is, will that somebody or should that somebody be the Toronto Blue Jays? Alongside me, KP Wee, Stephen Van Voot. We've got Niall O'Donohoe. We've got Lou Filippo. We call this the Bullpen Sessions here on TSN 1040, where you just get a bunch of guys hanging around, chewing the fat on all things baseball. And you know what? I'll start with you, Stephen, because I have 2 schools of thought here. One is who wants to get back on the field faster. The Blue Jays want Josh Donaldson back on the field faster, or does Josh Donaldson himself want him back on the field faster? The reason I say that is Josh Donaldson is looking at getting paid. And the only way you get paid is if you're on the Toronto Blue Jays want to know what they have. Do they have damaged goods? Do they have a player that can still be an MVP caliber player? So the question that I would pose to you, let's do it from the Blue Jays perspective. What do you do with Josh Donaldson?
Well, Josh is a competitor, so he's going to want to play as much as possible, right? He's already a month behind everyone else in the league. He's got a lot of catching up to do. He's also got to prove that he's not fragile. What we've seen in the last 2 years is that he's been hurt, and he's been hurt a lot. And like you said, he is working for a new contract, so he's got some catching up to do.
It's been a while since the Blue Jays have had a third baseman that's been sturdy. Correct me if I'm wrong. Donaldson was traded for Brett Laurie.
That's
Laurie also had issues when he played the hot corner when it came to his health as well.
He did. You can think of Kelly Gruber. Started off great and then just kind of tailed off towards the end. As far as Donaldson goes, you're starting to wonder exactly how healthy is he going to be. When he is healthy, he's one of the best players in the game, but I don't know. I mean, I'm also looking the way the Blue Jays have been going lately. I mean, I really kind of thought this past week was a litmus test for them, and they did not do very well.
Well, before we get to your thoughts, Lou, and then KP, Lou, when I think of this, there's the wild card in all of this, which is the guy that is lighting up Double-A right now, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., still a year, maybe 2 years away from being a bona fide guy that you could put at third base for the Blue Jays, but it does present at least an option for Josh Donaldson, for Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro when it comes to Josh Donaldson, because hey, if they don't have to go out and pay him an exorbitant amount of money because they know that the cavalry's coming over the horizon.
On Josh Donaldson's part, I actually do kind of feel a little bad for him. He was very, very late coming into the major leagues. He was 26. He's been a fantastic player. He's going to be 33 years old in December. And we've already seen how teams are kind of holding back on older players. I don't think he's going to get a 5-year deal. I think he'll be very fortunate to get a 3-year deal, especially with the injuries he's had the last couple of years. And I don't think Toronto's the team to do it for the very simple reason. Either you're going to win or you're not. And if you're not going to win, why do you spend the money? Give your younger players time on the field, and hopefully in a couple of years you can make your run. And oh, by the way, he's been traded twice for Canadians, Rich Harden as well.
I don't know. Food for thought, I guess. KP, what do you think? I mean, we've gone around the table. If you're the Blue Jays, are you saying to yourself, well, you know what? It's been nice knowing you. I want to move on. I want to move forward. Or do you still buy stock in Josh Donaldson?
Well, he is still 32 years old at the moment. He is still 32 at the moment, and the former MVP. He's a month behind, as was mentioned, but he's got 3 consecutive 30 home run seasons, and including his MVP year. So I wouldn't give up on a guy like that. And if you're just serious about winning, this year, as we said, it's still early, but you can have Donaldson play third, and if he needs a day off or something, have him DH. Kendrys Morales in the DH role is hitting 205. You could have Donaldson split time with him in the DH role, so he can get his at bats. He can be productive. He doesn't have to have the pressure of being on the field all the time. I think if I were the Blue Jays, I would just keep playing him and give him the at bats, give him the playing time.
What about signing him and using him as a mentor, right, to a guy like Vladdy Jr.? I know it's an expensive mentor, but you saw what the Canucks did with Henrik and Daniel. They kind of passed the torch off to the younger guys. That might be something appealing. Yeah, I know the Canucks are in a different position than the Jays, but it could be an option to pass the torch off and really show Vladdy what it is to be like a big league stud.
I look at it, once again on Donaldson's point. He's going to want to go somewhere where he can win now. He's unfortunately, it doesn't look like he's built to be playing till he's 40. And let's not forget, Encarnacion just 2 years ago, with numbers that, without the MVP award, but numbers across the board that were spectacular, only got 3 years. And that's really what I see there. And on the Blue Jays part, if you can get a king's ransom for a team that is in the chase, that is going to win now, that needs a third baseman to fill out their lineup, hello Boston, hello New York, you do it. Because 3 or 4 years down the road, that's when you're going to be able to compete. Their young pitchers are going to be getting paid in a couple of years, and you've got money tied up in Tulowitzki, and then if you tie it up in Donaldson, I know Rogers has lots of money, but there's a reason why they have lots of money. They know how to save it.
What do you think the market is right now for Josh Donaldson?
Right now, it's going to be next to nothing. But you have to wait a bit longer, make sure he gets his at-bats, and then, once again, come around the trade deadline. I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe somebody goes down somewhere. Hey, Ryan Zimmerman gets hurt.
Is Josh Donaldson a poor man's Manny Machado if they both go to free agency?
I think a very poor.
Very poor.
Yeah.
Right
well,
now.
no, and I don't mean that with any disrespect to Josh
sure.
Donaldson,
No,
but I
of
mean
course.
Manny Machado, if we're talking about guys that could play third base, is obviously the alpha going into free agency. But Josh Donaldson, if we were to say hypothetically, Josh Donaldson, 3 years, $50 million, 3 at 50, which is about what, $16-17 million a season?
Yeah, of course.
I think there's a lot of teams that would take a look at that.
Yeah, for sure.
But
I
should
think
the
he
Blue
would do
Jays
it.
be one of them?
I don't know if he stays with the Blue Jays at that amount, if he gets the same somewhere else, like I said, for the opportunity to win.
I think the Jays would easily have to cough up north of $20 million per year to keep him. I would think.
See, I look at it like this, and I say, for example, Yu Darvish, in 2 World Series games, I thought, how much did that cost him in free agency? Because I thought to myself, if he went out there and had a fantastic World Series, then he was really up there as the marquee guy that was on the free agent market, and he still was. He got paid eventually because good pitching always finds its way in free agency. But I just think to myself right now, Josh Donaldson, when he comes back, and he's still going to miss another 10 games. He's only now starting to get into his rehab program. If he misses upwards of 50 games this year, like if he goes on the DL at any point again, he's taking a major haircut on what he could have made had he been that nails tough guy that looked sort of like an MVP. KP, I don't know about you when it comes to the dollars and cents, but I mean, you mentioned, Niall, $20 million.
I would have to think so.
I can't imagine a guy that's been banged up the way Josh Donaldson has over 2 years is worth more than $15 million a year. Max.
Well, with the way that the teams have been, I guess, the pattern of signing players, yeah, they're avoiding these old guys, older players who are maybe injury prone, and perhaps they're going with younger players. I think the exception was the San Francisco Giants this year when they, they had a bunch of older players, including Longoria, whom they acquired from Tampa, and teams are starting to go young. And you saw, the free agents out there this year, like Jake Arrieta, just to name one. These guys didn't get signed until much later, and I don't think I agree with you, Rob. I don't think Donaldson's going to command that much money in the free agency market.
But he obviously wants to get back to at least show that he's A, healthy, and B, viable to a team that is willing to pay that kind of money. All right, let's switch away from Josh Donaldson here. And, Stephen, we all know that the younger generation of Blue Jay fans have really latched on to Marcus Stroman. Marcus Stroman this season has been average at best. Like, with all due respect, I've been worried about him in the fact that last 2 years he's gone 200 innings. He also pitched in the World Baseball Classic. And, yes, tip of the cap, he was the MVP of the World Baseball Classic. But that is a lot of torque on a body that, even though it's been kissed by God, is not your prototypical farmer 6'4", 230, 240. So my question is twofold. One, is Marcus Stroman the face of the franchise now? Like, is he the guy in Donaldson's absence? Like, is he the alpha in that room? And secondly, is he starting to slow down? Are we starting to see just the sheer raw torque of what he's gone through in the last 2 years finally catch up to him? Maybe the book's out on him.
No. So to start off, I think, for one, Marcus Stroman, I think, thinks he's the alpha in the room, and with his personality, that is his personality. He's the number one guy. I'm going to beat you every pitch. That's just who he is. I think my face of the franchise would have to be either a Kevin Pillar type or an Aaron Sanchez. Aaron Sanchez, I think, is the ace of that staff, other than, well, you could argue J.A. Happ, I guess. But I don't think you have to be worried about Stroman. I think it's just a slow start. He is young, and I think his body, even though his body actually could contribute to help him because he is a smaller guy, like I think that could help him in the long run with just his amount of innings.
And you have to remember, too, he's just getting back into the flow of things because he did miss a good chunk of spring training. So, yeah, I mean, really, I think he's really still going through his spring training now. This continues another month from now, then you have to be worried. But I thought his last start kind of showed some promising signs until the last inning kind of blew up on him. But the Yankees kind of do that to a lot of teams and a lot of pitchers. So, yeah, I would have to say right now, yeah, you'd have to say Stroman is face of the franchise, but yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, you go 200 innings a season. Yeah, it might catch up to you because that's not an easy milestone for any pitcher these days.
It's interesting. We're talking about the face of the franchise, and Aaron Sanchez, wonderful player. Kevin Pillar, super guy. Quite honestly, he's achieved probably more than he even thought he could achieve. Marcus Stroman has that attitude and that charisma. But do any of them qualify really as someone who you'd say, hey, this is the face of the franchise? And Donaldson to me is still the face of that franchise, but he's certainly on the way out. It's like Joey Bats was the face of this franchise for a very, very long time. The concern I have with Stroman, and he's fought against this for his entire career, the comparisons to other short pitchers like Tom Gordon. You know what? He's starting to fall into that same pattern, where the second, third, fourth, fifth times around, they've caught up to the angle that it's coming down, and he doesn't have the sheer, quality to overcome that.
That's
and
why
that's
he tried. Yeah, that's why he tried to change and drop his arms so that he had a different release point.
Yeah.
That to me screams nervous. If I'm a pitching coach, if you're changing where your slot is and your release points, those are two things that would make me say either he knows that people are starting to catch up and the book's out on him, or he's just trying to tinker and be creative. Which in baseball, sometimes if it ain't broke, don't fix it, man. And that makes me a little bit nervous. Who's to say that the face isn't Roberto Osuna? I mean, the reality is he's the youngest closer in Major League Baseball history to get to 100 saves. Now, we only see him for 45 or 50 innings, over the course of a season.
One inning.
But
plus, if you're lucky.
I remember, you think of the great closers, Mariano Rivera, Trevor Hoffman in San Diego. Trevor Hoffman was up there as the face of the franchise. Now, I know he had tenure, but, I don't know. Like Kevin Pillar, like you said, Lou, great story. But to me, with being the face of the franchise comes a pretty fair amount of success. And you look at Marcus Stroman over the years, 11-6, 9-10, 13-9. It's okay. The innings are great, and the personality's fantastic. And when he fought back and helped get them to the playoffs, that was great. But face of the franchise is kind of a big deal.
Well, in terms of closers, I think unless you're a Mariano Rivera, like you alluded to, Rob, I don't see a closer being the face of any franchise unless, like you said, you're like a Rivera or a Hoffman type pitcher with all that success and tenure. I would still go with Aaron Sanchez. He's still young. He's 25 years old. He's the ace of the team, of the pitching staff. J.A. Happ, he's a bit older. I wouldn't call him the face of the Blue Jays franchise. In terms of Marcus Stroman, I think it's something that you have to be concerned about because he's had like back-to-back 200-inning seasons. He's off to a poor start this year. I would be concerned. And in terms of there being a quote somewhere saying that shorter pitchers they don't last as long, and he's the 200-inning seasons are great, but you wonder if he's been overworked.
He's 0-2 with an 8.55 ERA this year. Here's a number that I look at, and we got to take a break here. We'll come back and wrap this show up. He's usually a 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio guy. That is what you want in baseball. You get 3-to-1, that's a guy. He's got 21 strikeouts in 20 innings, but he's got 14 walks this year, and that's a part of it. In addition to giving up more than a hit an inning, he's also almost got a walk per inning, which makes me a little bit nervous. So again, Stroh's got a little bit of concern. Well, meanwhile, Aaron Sanchez looks like the blisters behind him, and if there was a face, maybe he is a guy. And it doesn't matter because in 2 years, we all know who the face of the franchise is going to be anyway.
It's going to be Vladdy.
We all know that. All right, we'll take a break. We'll take a break here. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show, but not before we get into a couple more topics that I think will be pretty charged up in here. For example, when we talk about Major League Baseball, we talk about, obviously, the next generation. We're always thinking of who's going to be the next Ronald Acuna, who's going to be the next Vladimir Guerrero Jr. When we think of the Toronto Blue Jays, and the Seattle Mariners, for this matter, they are in the midst of a changing of the guard, as you've just heard this last segment. Young, better, better, better. Which of these two franchises will finally figure it out? Will it be the Blue Jays who end up going out and getting a guy like Vladdy and Bo in the next generation, but then also miss on guys like Phil Bickford and Tyler Beede? Or will it be, of course, the Mariners, who right now are resting heavily on James Paxton, knowing that Felix is ready to take his crown off? We'll get into the Jays versus the Mariners. Who's got the better system and who deserves the praise? Next, right here on 1040. Man, sometimes I wish we didn't have to go to a commercial. I told you what we're going to talk about just before we went to commercial. I'm like, who's closer to the finish line, the Blue Jays or the Mariners? If you could have heard the 3 minutes that we were bandying about, it's pretty obvious that the Mariners have a long way to go to get anywhere close to the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm Rob Fay. This is Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice, joined by Lou Filippo, Niall O'Donohoe. I've got Stephen Von Voot, and I've also got KP Wee. KP will be back in a second. He's just finishing up his seafood over there in the corner. Dude, I'm sorry. I'm not going to let you live that one down for a while. Calamari on a 3-digit day is probably not where I'm going with it. But, okay. So before we've talked a lot about the Blue Jays, so let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the Mariners. And, Stephen, you were bringing up during the break that they just absolutely depleted themselves. And, Lou, then you added that they went for runs at the wrong time. So, Stephen, I'll start with you. You talk about guys that they let go over the last 2 years, including Gohara, Tyler O'Neill, Alex Jackson, and last year's top pitching prospect, Nick Neidert. That's, as you said, their whole transition.
And I think they were trying to make a run in these last couple of years, right? I mean, like we mentioned, Felix Hernandez was getting up there in age. But they thought with Nelson Cruz and Robinson Cano signing that they were a team that could possibly win the World Series. And I think they obviously believe that pretty strongly because they traded away those 3 or 4 top prospects for aging players. sign some aging players, and you know what? Now they've got nothing left, and the Blue Jays transition is underway for their rebuild on the fly, if you want to call it that. But the Mariners it's kind of a scary time for them.
Baseball America ranked them the worst farm system in all of minor league baseball.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of teams make this mistake, and we've seen it happen in multiple sports, and that is you think you're close, and you sell the farm, and you bring back mediocre stuff because you think they're that little piece. And that's what Seattle's done. I mean, you look at their current major league roster, and you're talking about you need a minor league system to fill them in. They've only got one player on the roster right now who is under the age of 25. One. They've got everyone there is 30 or hitting above it, and their top players are in their mid-30s. They're going to be in the toilet for a long time.
It's going to take a while to build up the farm system again. You look at their top prospect, Kyle Lewis. We saw him here a couple of years ago and showed some promise, and he wrecked his knee, and I think he wrecked it again, if I'm not mistaken. So he's had some knee issues. You have to wonder, he was a center fielder at first. Looks like he probably is going to have to go to the corner because, when you hurt your knee, it's going to, take some speed out of your engine, so to speak. But, their farm system has been depleted, and Lewis is probably the top prospect. You have Evan White, their first baseman. We didn't get to see him too much in the Northwest League, but a very good defensive first baseman. Sam Carlson, one of their top prospects. But really, after that, the system really tails off.
So, KP, here's my problem is now you've realized that the Seattle Mariners are going to be, as we've heard, in the toilet for the next couple of years once this last run goes. If I'm a fan of the Mariners, at least if I'm a fan of the Blue Jays, I know that I'm going to be buying 2020 season tickets. What do you do if you're a fan of the Mariners right now?
Well, I would like to go back to what Stephen and Lou were alluding to earlier, and that was trading away prospects in order to make a run for it. Sometimes I feel you do have to do that to tell your fan base, hey, we're in contention. We're willing to make the moves now to improve our ball club. There is a second wild card now, and you have to be able to show your fans, hey, we're going to go for it this year, and we're going to try. It doesn't work out sometimes because there are 30 teams and only one of them is going to win the championship. But I don't fault any organization for going after a playoff spot just because we have the second wild card. And I know it's a one-game shot, but you got to go for it sometimes.
It's not that I'm against going for it, but you have to actually look at it, and you have to be honest with your team. And this comes back to the Blue Jays. If they're kind of close and they decide, hey, you know what, maybe we have a chance. No, you don't have a chance. You have Houston, Boston, New York in the same league. You don't have a chance. So you do not give your guys away. What Seattle was dealing with was having Houston in their own division, which they just weren't going to catch.
Mm-hmm. And if you're going to do that and you're going to sell everyone to try and go for it, you have to jump in fully. You got to jump in on 100% on board. You can't, as a fan base, I'm a Canucks fan, so you really you feel for the fan base out there too who they've never won a championship. You got to really make your fan base jump on board with you.
I go back to teams like the 2003 Marlins, the 2006 Cardinals. They were teams that not expected to win, but when you get to the playoffs, anything can happen. And I just feel that sometimes you just got to go for it, and you never know what's going to happen when October comes around, and the hottest team might win that championship.
It's great to have a good farm system and all, but at the end of the day, it's still about success in the major league level. And the Mariners, they've had a couple of entertaining runs over the last few years. So that's something at least the Mariners fans can hang their hat on. But at the same time, the bill is going to be coming due, and that's what's going to happen.
The other thing I remember is if the Blue Jays make all those moves and don't make it to the postseason, they too have a depleted.
Yeah.
See, it looks like two systems that kind of went about it the same way. One had success and got over the top. The other one fell a little bit short. Steven, I think that'd be a fair comparison. I mean, think about that. The Blue Jays had 2 go-arounds with Alex Anthopoulos. First one they did with Miami where they got Jack Johnson and then you got Mark Burley and Jose Reyes, but you gave up some pretty good prospects. Then they do the second go-around and they give up, I think it was 9 minor league pitchers when all the dust settled and all that stuff. I sit here and I think to myself, if Seattle gets in and actually has similar success to the Blue Jays, nobody's talking about their depleted system.
True, and what they missed the playoffs by that one year. They played Oakland on the final day.
That's
they beat Oakland, and Texas won or something, so they still didn't get in. So yeah, you're right. If they get in and say they get a hot pitcher, and Felix was dicing that year too. So if they win a playoff round, then maybe we're not having this conversation right now.
I don't think so. Winning forgives everything.
I think the Mariners also got burned with Drew Smiley. I thought that was a great pickup in the offseason, and he never threw a pitch for them. And I mean, Mariners have just had bad luck, but yeah, you just have to wonder when's it ever going to turn around for the Mariners.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the difference. When the Jays made those deals, what they were getting back were studs. They got back Jose Reyes, who at the time was considered one of the best shortstops. Mark Burley, okay? He's a borderline Hall of Famer, inning eater. Johnson won the ERA title. R.A. Dickey was a Cy Young winner. When Pat Gillick made the trades in 92 and 93, he brought back David Cone and Ricky Henderson. We're not talking about bringing back guys that, hey, you know what? They might give you a hand here. He brought back guys who walk into the dugout and automatically command.
Nelson Cruz and Robinson Cano.
But
Cano was a free agent signing.
at the time when the Blue Jays won back-to-back titles, they had to win the division in order to get to the playoffs. Now it's a different system. You got the wild card.
No,
But it's you don't have to necessarily win the division to make the playoffs, and that was my point.
Okay, you trade for a third liner or you trade for a first liner. The Jays moved for first liners. Seattle's been trading for third liners and giving away their top prospects.
We're talking about a team that hasn't been in the playoffs since 2001.
And it's going to be a long time till they're back again.
What I find interesting for the Toronto Blue Jays from their perspective is how quick they were able to kind of restock. And it wasn't all just through the draft. Like, yeah, they got Nate Pearson, they got Logan Warmouth and all that stuff, but they were able to go out and sign one of the hottest international free agents in Vladdy. And I think they got a little lucky as well with some of the guys. I don't think they thought Kevin Biggio was going to pan out as much as he has. I don't know. They as unlucky as the Mariners have been, the Blue Jays over the last 2 or 3 years have actually been lucky. So, or maybe I should pull back
Bo
lucky.
Bichette in the second round. That was an absolute steal for them now.
But you know, when I use the phrase lucky, and unfortunately we're going to run out of time here, but maybe it's just good scouting. Maybe Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins deserve a little more praise than we give them credit for.
Got to create your own luck sometimes, right? So.
Yeah.
I mean, even the trades when they sent away all those pitchers, yeah, they sent away a lot of quality, but they still had Stroman and Sanchez sitting there in the back. So you can kind of give away from an area where you have plentiful resources.
Oh, you always deal from a position of strength, even when you know you got stuff
yeah.
on the cover. Final, we don't have a lot of time to go further. I just always remember the Miami Marlins when apparently they had the choice of any of the 3 studs of the Toronto Blue Jays organization. They had a chance at Syndergaard. They took Nicolino, which... That's bad luck. A lot. All right, gents, we got to wrap it up. We'll do this next Thursday. I really appreciate you guys making time for us here on Vancouver Canadians Game Day. My thanks to KP Wee, Stephen Van Voot, Niall O'Donohoe, and Lou Filippo. Guys, you're welcome back anytime. And I'll tell you what, man, good show. We got a lot of baseball talk in. We'll be back Thursday from 7 to 9. I look forward to having you guys all back. Until then, I'm Rob Fay. This has been Vancouver Canadians Game Day, powered by Booster Juice right here on TSN 1040, and Rob Fay Nation Radio is next.
This TSN 1040 podcast is powered by Metro Ford. It's hard to beat a Metro Ford deal in Fort Coquitlam and online at metromotors.com.